want to get started. Job order costing is similar to what we just did. You'll notice that these are very familiar accounts, the same ones we used before. Direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. Now, these first two are pretty easy. If you know, for example, if you bought, let's do direct materials. If you paid $20 for some plywood, and you make 4 desks, you know, it's real easy how much to trace how much goes into each one, because it's direct. $20 piece of plywood, you make 4 desks, that's $5 per desk. So these two are easy. This one is the hard one, and this is the one we're going to concentrate on today. Overhead, it has to be allocated. We'll talk about that in a second. The problem with overhead is all the costs are indirect. Generally speaking, they're going to be indirect for all overhead. And that is, it's very difficult to trace how much goes into each item. You know, here we get the $20 piece of plywood, makes 4 desks, really easy. Down here, okay, let's look at janitor. It's very hard to look at that janitor and say, okay, how much of that janitor's salary goes into this desk? So these are all things that are very difficult to directly tie to what you're making, whatever it is. And by the way, this could be for anything. I mean, this could be in a restaurant. You know, a restaurant, you have, you know, direct materials are going to be your food. Your direct labor are going to be your chefs and your waiters and bartenders and all that. But then you're going to have this overhead. You know, for a restaurant, it'd be exactly the same thing. And then, you know, how do you're going to pay property taxes on your building? Okay, how does that go into, you know, the cheeseburger or whatever that you just made? And, you know, so it's very difficult to tie these directly into whatever it is you're making. And so, you know, this kind of talks about that. On the second page here, we're going to look at some problems with actual costing. It sounds, people will say, well, what does it actually cost? What's the actual cost of this? And that is a very difficult question to ask, especially if you are, if you're partway through the year. If the year's over, it's not such a hard question, you can get it. But if the year's not over, you have some difficulty. So just intuitively, you think that actual costing would be the way to go. This must be the best way to do it. There's a problem with it. And that is, you will not know the actual cost for the year until the end of the year. The actual cost for the entire year will not be known until the end. And you say, well, why can't I just take the cost for the month? Well, there's a problem with that. Variability. And that is, different months will have different costs that relate to the entire year. Property taxes are usually paid twice a year. Some places are paid once a year. So if you take the actual cost for that, whatever month you pay the property tax in, those items are going to look like they're very expensive. When actually they're all in the same building. They're all made in the same building. So because it varies so much between the months, you can't really do it by the month. You have to do it by the year to get a total. Furthermore, this is actually a chart that shows the real-time fluctuations of electricity that's charged to businesses. Businesses are generally charged on an hourly rate. And they do, and the businesses are charged that way so that they can hopefully change their production so that they work at a more efficient time. So for instance, Maybe they have a night shift. Electricity is usually cheaper at night, so maybe they'd have a night shift in and avoid high costs in the day. But looking at this, you can see this is on December 31st. I don't know what year it is. Oh, kind of old, but you can see these are the prices by the hour. You know, this. So you can imagine if you're doing this in actual costing, you know, the items you made at 10 o'clock were very cheap. You made them very well. The cost is very low. Same exact building, same exact people, same exact shift. Go to 11 o'clock and they're very expensive. Yeah, and so on and so forth. Furthermore, you don't have any control over this. So it's not like you can, you know, that as a manager, you can do much about this. So that's why we, you know, you wait till the end of the year for the actual costing. The problem is, what do you do during the year? So we're going to start with the first problems here. We allocate the costs, and it's used so much that this is called normal costing. So normal costing is generally what we're going to call that. Occasionally you see it called traditional costing, but normal costing is the normal one. And that's where we use estimates. And there'll be estimates for the amount, the total amount of overhead you think you're going to have, and there'll be an estimate for whatever is driving the overhead. It's usually direct labor hours. It could be other things too. So, you know, you have this estimate of overhead. So this is an estimate, and you make these at the beginning of the year. So this would be, if it's 2019, this would have been made on 1/1/2019. You'd say, okay, what do we think our overhead is going to be for the next year? You know, maybe look at last year, see what the overhead was, whatever it is. And the budgeted direct labor hours. So this will be our labor hours. And this is what we're going to use to apply the overhead. And we'll see how we go. It's not too bad. Okay, so we take the budgeted overhead. $800,000. There's a little tiny spider. I don't know if you can see this. There's a tiny, tiny spider. This came down from my camera. That's how you know you don't use your camera enough. You use spiders. All right. What do I do with my ruler? Ooh. Okay, well, we'll use the old Toys R Us card then. Okay, so the budget overhead divided by the budgeted, in this case, direct labor hours. So we are going to divide those. So we're going to apply this at $80 per direct labor. Okay, so during the year, we had 9,500 actual direct labor hours. So we want to see how much overhead was applied. Well, so 9,500 times 80. So $760,000 was applied. Okay. Coming down here. Now, after year end, you can get the actual overhead. And usually you can't get this until later on in January, maybe even February, before you get the actual overhead, because all the bills and that have to come in. So you're going to compare what you applied versus what is your actual cost. Hopefully they're not too far off. Oops. 752. Okay, so this would be find my rule or something. All right, so they applied 760. The actual was only 752, so the difference, we're just subtracting those. There's 8,000, and this is a positive, so this is over applied. Over applied overhead. So this is they applied too much overhead. They applied 760. Now, if they had a crystal ball, they would have known that it would only be 752, but they didn't know that. So the 760 is what they applied. The actual is this, so they over applied 8,000. And you know, they say, well, is that good or bad? Well, it's probably not too bad. You know, you think about $8,000, something a lot of money, but you're talking about 760,000. So this is probably like 1% or maybe a little more than 1%. Okay, we'll do one more here, and then we'll. Oh, you guys! I know you guys have your other thing to turn in today, so. Okay. And page. Two. We got. There's some other thing that we have here. We're not going to need these. I put those in there just to know that we still have direct labor and direct materials, you know, but we're not going to use those. We're going to use these other two. So these are the two that we're using. We're calculating the overhead rate. So this is the overhead rate. Toys R Us card. Oops, let's go a little further here. Okay, so this is $100,000 divided by 8,000 hours. So this is per direct labor hour. Okay. Actual direct labor hours was 8,400 times 1250. So this will show us what the overhead, how much of it was applied. And we will compare that to year end. So at year end, our applied overhead was 105. Our actual overhead I gotta get my ruler. My Toys R Us card is just not big enough. See, I'm messing it up with this. Okay, so that is what, -3. So this is under applied. Overhead. Yeah. They applied 105, but the actual was 108. So this is, they applied too little. And, again, this is, how serious is it? 3,000 is a little bit high, 3% or a little less, but it's never going to be perfect. Okay? And you say, well, why don't we use the actual overhead? Because you're not going to know until year end. So if you're in January, you can't wait until the summer to know if you're losing money or something like that. You need to make changes or something. So actual overhead, the problem with it is the time. It takes too long to get it. Okay, so I think we're going to, we'll call it a day right there. So the first 2 problems on this. And I will have this posted later on today. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.